Imagine waking up one morning. There is no phone, no books, no money, no countries, no religion, no laws, no companies, no internet. All that remains are the things you can truly see and touch. A river, a forest, a herd of deer, a pile of stones, a fire, a group of people sitting around you. That is the world in which most animals live. A world where only real, tangible things exist. But now return to the present. What makes billions of people wake up every morning and go to work? Pieces of money. What makes millions of people willing to sacrifice their lives? The flag of a nation. What allows strangers who have never met to cooperate in building enormous cities, sending spacecraft to Mars, or creating the internet? Belief. The strange thing is, money has no natural value. Borders do not exist in nature. A nation is not a physical object. You cannot hold a law in your hands. Companies do not have physical bodies. Even human rights are not something you can find beneath a microscope. And yet billions of people behave as though all of these things are completely real. No wolf believes in money. No chimpanzee creates a company. No elephant fights for a national flag. No animal species organizes an election. Across the entire natural world, only Homo sapiens possesses the ability to believe collectively in things that exist solely within the imagination. And that strange ability changed the destiny of the planet. It transformed a once vulnerable primate on the African savanna into the dominant creature on Earth. But how did the human brain develop an ability that seems so irrational? Why could belief in stories become more powerful than claws, fangs, or muscle? And could it be that the very ability which made our civilization extraordinary is also the most dangerous thing evolution has ever created? From a biological perspective, Homo sapiens is not the strongest animal. We are not the fastest runners. We are not the best swimmers. We do not possess the strongest jaws. We have no sharp claws. Nor do we have protective armor like many other species. If you placed a human alone on the African savanna 200,000 years ago, their chances of survival would be extremely small. Yet strangely, within only a few tens of thousands of years, this seemingly fragile animal appeared on every continent, from the Sahara Desert to the Amazon rainforest, from the peaks of the Himalayas to the frozen Arctic. Eventually, we even set foot on the moon. What created this almost unimaginable leap? For centuries, people believed the answer was intelligence, a larger brain, better reasoning, more advanced tools. But when scientists began studying our extinct human relatives more closely, the picture became far more complicated. Neanderthals also possessed large brains. They knew how to use fire. They hunted large animals. They cared for the elderly. They crafted sophisticated tools. Homo erectus left Africa nearly 2 million years ago. They adapted to many different environments. They survived far longer than Homo sapiens has existed. If we consider intelligence alone, we were not the only intelligent human species. If we consider survival ability alone, we were not necessarily the best. So what made Homo sapiens different? One answer began to emerge when anthropologists observed the way other primates live. A group of chimpanzees can cooperate very effectively. They hunt monkeys together. They defend territory together. They help raise their young. But that cooperation almost always remains limited to a few dozen individuals. When two unfamiliar chimpanzee groups meet, what usually follows is not cooperation. It is conflict. Humans are completely different. Today, millions of strangers can cooperate to build a single airplane. Tens of thousands of engineers in different countries can work together to develop an operating system. A phone in your hand may be designed in the United States, use chips made in Taiwan, contain minerals from Africa, be assembled in Vietnam or China, and be sold to customers around the world. None of those people know one another. They are not related by blood. They do not belong to the same tribe. So what keeps them connected? Not strength, not genetics, but a shared story they all believe. A company exists because every employee believes that the company is real. Money has value because people agree that it has value. A country exists because millions of people share belief in borders that nature never drew. In this sense, Homo sapiens is the first animal capable of creating imagined realities. These are not lies. They are not hallucinations. They are ideas that exist only when many people believe in them together. And that ability opened the door to a form of cooperation no other species in the history of life had ever achieved. But How did the human brain develop such a strange ability? To answer that question, we must travel back approximately 70,000 years to a period many scientists call the cognitive revolution. Around 70,000 years ago, something happened to Homo sapiens. It was not a meteorite. It was not a volcanic eruption, nor was it the invention of some miraculous tool. What changed was the brain itself. Scientists still debate the precise cause. Perhaps it was a genetic mutation. Perhaps it was a reorganization of neural networks. Or perhaps it resulted from many small changes accumulating over hundreds of thousands of years. But whatever the cause, its consequences transformed all of human history. For the first time, humans could do more than speak about things that were physically present. They could speak about things that did not exist. Imagine two hunters preparing to leave. If one says, "There is a lion behind the hill," the other person can verify the claim. They can walk there, or look with their own eyes. But if someone says, "This forest is protected by the spirits of our ancestors," everything immediately becomes different. No one can see the spirits. No one can touch them. No one can prove that they exist. And yet, if the entire group believes the story, they will behave as though it is true. They may avoid a certain area. They may perform a ritual before hunting. They may pass the story on to their children. Within only a few generations, an invisible idea becomes part of a culture. It was a turning point that had never appeared in any other animal species. A wolf can sound an alarm when danger is near. A bee can show other bees where flowers are located. A dolphin can communicate through highly complex signals. But all of that information refers to the real world, to food, to predators, to shelter. No other species can collectively believe in a fictional story and then act according to it. Humans can. And that was when imagination became a tool for survival. Consider a tribe of 200 people. Not everyone is related. Not everyone has known one another since birth. What makes them willing to share food? What makes them fight together? What makes them sacrifice personal interests for the community? Most likely, it is not because they personally know everyone. It is because they all believe in a story greater than themselves, that they are descendants of the same ancestor, that their land is sacred, that their chief was chosen by the gods, or that the entire tribe shares one common destiny. Those stories may be impossible to verify with the eyes, but they create something even more powerful than objective truth. They create unity. A group of 20 people may cooperate because of family relationships, but a community of 2,000 can survive only if its members share a common belief. And from that moment onward, humans began building societies larger than any other primate species had ever achieved. But the strange thing is, at first, those stories were probably very simple. A legend about an ancestor, a sacred mountain, or a revered animal. No one could have imagined that tens of thousands of years later, the same psychological mechanism would create religions, empires, countries, currencies, and all of modern civilization. What is astonishing is that these stories did not disappear as humans became more advanced. Quite the opposite. They became larger, more complex, and more influential than ever before. Look at a banknote. If an alien picked it up from the ground, what would they see? Only a piece of paper or a sheet of plastic. It cannot be eaten. It cannot be used to build a house. It cannot protect you from wild animals. Physically speaking, it is almost worthless. Yet every day, billions of people exchange their time, labor, intelligence, and even their entire lives for these pieces of paper. What gives them that power? Not the paper, not the ink, but collective belief. Money has value only because millions, and eventually billions, of people agree that it has value. If all humanity stopped believing in money tomorrow morning, it would instantly become ordinary paper. The same is true of countries. Look at Earth from outer space. You will not see any national borders. There are no red lines, no enormous fences crossing entire continents, no labels displaying the names of countries. Nature never divided the world into Vietnam, Japan, Brazil, or Egypt. Those are concepts created by humans. But because millions of people believe in them, they become real within human life. People pay taxes. They obey laws. They defend territory. And sometimes, they are willing to sacrifice their lives for borders that do not exist in nature. This may sound strange, but nearly every large organization we know operates according to the same principle. A company is not a building. If the building burns down, the company may continue to exist. A company is not its director. The director can resign, and the company continues operating. Even nearly all of its employees can be replaced. So what is a company? It is an idea, an invisible agreement accepted by many people. The same is true of a university, a bank, a constitution, a brand, a sports team, or even an economy. All of these exist because people share a common belief. Nothing like this appears in any other animal species. A pride of lions cannot create a bank. A herd of elephants cannot form a government. A group of chimpanzees cannot build a corporation with hundreds of thousands of members spread across several continents. Not because they lack intelligence, but because they cannot collectively believe in the same abstract story. Humans can. And when millions of brains share the same imagined reality, they create a power far greater than the combined physical strength of all the individuals involved. That is the foundation of every civilization. But this same ability also opened the door to a darker side. Because if humans can believe together in positive ideas, they can also believe together in dangerous ones. And history has repeatedly shown that a story can build an entire civilization, but it can also destroy one. Human history is filled with examples of the power of stories. Not stories told merely for entertainment, but stories powerful enough to make millions of people move in the same direction. A soldier does not rush into battle only because of survival instinct. That instinct usually tells him to run away. What makes him remain may be loyalty to his comrades, belief in his homeland, an oath, or an ideal he believes is worth defending. A scientist may spend 30 years studying a disease, not because he knows for certain that he will succeed, but because he believes knowledge can save people he has never met. An entrepreneur may dedicate thousands of hours to building a company, not only because of money, but because of belief in an idea about the future. Even a mother or father who stays awake through countless nights caring for a child is acting according to values society has collectively developed around love, responsibility, and family. All of these things begin with stories, but this ability also carries a price. If a community believes that all people are equal, it may build a fairer society. But if a community believes that another group of people is inferior, that belief can also produce discrimination, oppression, and violence. The history of the world has witnessed countless wars born from ideas. Not because there was too little food, not because there was too little water, but because people believed different stories about who was right, who was wrong, who belonged, and who did not. The most frightening thing is not that humans possess imagination. It is what happens when we forget that these stories were created by us. Money is a remarkable invention, but it is not a law of nature. Countries allow millions of people to cooperate, but their borders were not carved into the ground by nature. Religion has inspired countless great works and acts of selfless compassion, but it has also become a cause of conflict. Imagined realities are not inherently good or evil. What matters is how humans use them. Perhaps this is the greatest paradox of Homo sapiens. We are the only animal capable of imagining things that have never existed, and also the only animal capable of turning those imagined things into reality. We imagined the wheel before we built it. We imagined cities before constructing them. We imagined human rights before writing them into law. We imagined spacecraft before setting foot on the moon. Every great achievement of civilization once began as an idea inside someone's mind. That leads us to an even deeper question. If imagination created civilization, why does only Homo sapiens possess this extraordinary ability? What is it about the human brain that allows us not only to imagine, but also to persuade millions of others to believe in an idea that never previously existed? For many years, scientists believed that what made humans different was simply brain size. It is true that the brain of Homo sapiens is larger than that of many other primates, but that is not the whole story. Neanderthals also had very large brains. In many cases, their brain volume was equal to, or even greater than, that of some modern humans. If size alone were the answer, we should not be the only species to have built civilization. So what truly made the difference? Modern neuroscience offers a fascinating answer. What matters is not only the number of neurons, it is how those neurons are connected. The prefrontal cortex is one of the most highly developed regions of the human brain. It is responsible for planning, predicting the future, controlling behavior, abstract thinking, and especially the ability to simulate events that have not yet occurred. You can imagine the house you will build 10 years from now. You can imagine a city that has never existed. You can plan a journey to a place you have never visited. You can even imagine the lives of people who will not be born for hundreds of years. This ability is known as mental simulation. The brain does not need the real world in order to experiment. It can create a world within itself that provides an enormous evolutionary advantage. If a leopard wants to know whether its jump will succeed, it must actually jump. If it fails, the cost may be a lost meal or an injury. Humans are different. We can test dozens of possibilities in our minds before taking action. A hunter can imagine the route a deer might take. A toolmaker can visualize the shape of a stone axe before striking the first blow. A leader can consider many options before making a decision. The brain becomes an invisible laboratory where thousands of scenarios are created, tested, and discarded without requiring us to pay the price in real life. But there is an even more remarkable ability. Humans do not only simulate things inside their own minds. We can transfer those simulations into the minds of others. When one person tells a story, the listener begins to see the same landscape, the same characters, the same goal. Dozens of people can share one idea. Hundreds can participate in one plan. Millions can pursue one dream. Scientists call this shared imagination. Perhaps this is the true superpower of Homo sapiens. Not the intelligence of each individual, but the ability to connect millions of brains into a network through stories. And when those stories are passed from one generation to the next, they become more than memories. They become culture. They become knowledge. They become civilization. But what is especially fascinating is that the ability to believe in invisible things did not merely change the way humans built societies. It changed the way we understood ourselves. And that may be the greatest revolution imagination has ever created. There is a fascinating paradox about human beings. We spend much of our lives pursuing things that cannot be touched. Honor, reputation, status, love, justice, freedom, meaning. No one can weigh 1 kilogram of justice. No one can measure the length of patriotism. No one can hold the concept of freedom in their hands. Yet human history has been shaped by these invisible things. If you examine the brain, you will discover something remarkable. When we experience an event in real life, and when we vividly imagine that event, many of the same brain regions become active. That is why a novel can make you cry. A film can make your heart race. A speech can give thousands of people goosebumps. The brain does not react only to reality. It reacts to the meaning reality carries. That is why stories are so powerful. A child does not learn courage by reading a definition. The child learns through stories about courageous people. A society does not pass on its values only through laws. It passes them on through legends, through myths, through history, through symbols, through rituals repeated from one generation to another. In essence, culture is an enormous archive of stories accumulated over tens of thousands of years. Because of culture, every child who is born does not need to begin again from nothing. A wolf cub must learn how to hunt from its pack, but a human child can absorb thousands of years of knowledge within only a few decades. The child learns a language created by ancestors, learns mathematics developed by many civilizations, learns science accumulated across countless generations, learns the laws, morality, and history of an entire society. Evolutionary scientists call this cultural evolution. Unlike biological evolution, which may require thousands or millions of years for a mutation to spread, cultural evolution can occur within a single generation. A new invention appears, a new idea is shared, a new method is learned, and within only a few years, millions of people can change the way they live. That is why Homo sapiens evolved more rapidly than any previous human species. Not because our genes changed faster, but because our knowledge continued accumulating. Each generation passes on more than DNA. It also passes on stories, ideas, discoveries, mistakes, and unfinished dreams. In a certain sense, what is truly immortal in human history is not the individual. It is the ideas that continue living after their creators are gone. A person may die, but their story continues to be told. A scientist may no longer be alive, but the scientist's discovery can continue changing the world. A civilization may collapse, but its ideas can be inherited by another civilization. Perhaps that is the greatest invention of Homo sapiens. Not fire, not the wheel, not agriculture, but the ability to allow knowledge and imagination to survive beyond the limits of one human life. That ability carried us from small hunting groups on the African savanna to the only species capable of collectively building a civilization that covers the entire planet. But this also leads to one final question. If every civilization is built upon stories that humans collectively believe, could those stories one day change again and change the future of humanity along with them? Perhaps the answer is that this is already happening. If someone who lived 5,000 years ago suddenly appeared in the modern world, they would be deeply confused. Not because of cars, not because of airplanes, not because of skyscrapers. What would astonish them most might be the number of imagined realities shared by modern humans. Consider the internet. You cannot see the internet as one physical object. There is no single place on Earth that contains the entire internet. It exists because billions of people participate in a shared network. Or consider cryptocurrency. For thousands of years, people believed money had to be made of gold, then silver, then paper. Today, millions of people believe in sequences of data stored on computers. Value no longer exists in the physical material. It exists in belief. Even artificial intelligence is creating an entirely new chapter. For the first time in history, humans are no longer creating only tools that support physical strength. We are creating tools that can support thought. This raises questions our ancestors never had to face. If part of human knowledge is created by machines, what role will humans play? If stories can be written by artificial intelligence, what will make human stories different? Perhaps, what defines Homo sapiens has never been only our ability to imagine. It is our ability to choose together what we should believe. We can create stories that divide, but we can also create stories that connect. We can build fear or nurture hope. We can turn differences into conflict or transform them into the strength of an entire civilization. That is why every generation is writing a new story, not only through words, but through its decisions, through the values we choose to protect, through the things we decide to pass on to our children, and through the dreams we choose to pursue together. Perhaps after hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, the most powerful thing Homo sapiens has ever created is not the pyramids, not the Great Wall of China, not the internet, not even spacecraft. It is the ability to make millions of strangers move toward a common goal they have never seen with their own eyes. That is the power that built every civilization. It is also the power that will determine the future of humanity. And perhaps, that is the answer to the question that opened this video. Humans are the only animals capable of believing in things that do not actually exist. Not because we are disconnected from reality, but because our brains can transform invisible ideas into reality. Every city, every school, every hospital, every democracy, every symphony, every invention, and every advancement of civilization once began as something that did not exist. An idea, a story, a shared belief. That is the greatest gift evolution gave to Homo sapiens. And it is also the greatest responsibility we carry. Thank you for joining us on this journey to explore one of humanity's strangest abilities. If you found this topic fascinating, leave a comment and tell us. Which story do you believe has had the greatest influence on human history? Do not forget to like and subscribe so you never miss our upcoming videos. In the next video, we will explore an equally fascinating question. Why are humans the only animals that can truly speak?